world. And Alana has worked in video and film production for nearly 40 years. She got her start at a very young age when she was 10 years old as an actress. I'm glad she's continued since then. It's wonderful. And since then, she's worn many hats as a producer, a director, a videographer, an editor, but her heart has always been in documentaries. Between 2003 and 2013, Alana was associate producer of the PBS documentaries, The Greatest Good, that was about the US Forest Service, and Green Fire, which was about conservationist Aldo Leopold. And in 2013, Alana began working on the first feature documentary about the history of Peace Corps, and that is The Towering Task, which she will discuss today. And on September 22, the film premiered to a full house at the Kennedy Center in Washington. There may be some people in today's event that were there. And in December 2020, she won the Best Director Award in the feature documentary category at the Indo Global International Film Festival in Mumbai. And being an RPCV, Alana has always understood that as walls are being built and nations are turning inward, and we see that nowadays, a comprehensive documentary of this globally engaged American agency, Peace Corps, was urgently needed. And to quote Alana, in a time when the American public sector or the American public either has a very antiquated, antiquated notion of the Peace Corps, sorry, I should have practiced that more, informed by an almost mythological awe of the 60s, or is not even aware that the Peace Corps still exists, it's high time to bring this unique organization back into the public discourse to raise the level of the discussion from quaint to crucial. And so we're very pleased to have Alana also at today's event. And now we will have Pat tell us just about the Museum of the Peace Corps experience. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry, so much for that introduction. And we are really delighted to be represented on this panel sponsored by Friends of Korea. Thank you, Jerry and Nancy, for inviting us to address your membership. You'll soon learn the backstory about the documentary, A Towering Task, when you hear from our very own award-winning RPCV documentarian, Alana DeJoseph. And in many ways, our panel today highlights the Peace Corps' first 60 years and how we are preserving those years, along with setting the platform for the next decades of Peace Corps service. I want to introduce you to the Museum of the Peace Corps experience and how the museum is preserving history while providing platforms for education and research, as well as discussions about the current Peace Corps and its future. Interestingly, a committee for a Museum of the Peace Corps experience was founded 20 years ago in Portland, Oregon, and hosted exhibits primarily in the Pacific Northwest during its first 15 years. The committee expanded to a national initiative during the 2016 Peace Corps Connect, the 55th anniversary event sponsored by the National Peace Corps Association. And that's when I became in part of the leadership team, joining Nicola Dino as our co-chair and members of the existing leadership team in Portland, Oregon, which has now expanded to be a robust group of people living across and working, volunteering from across the country. So we invite you to visit this homepage of our museum website and poke around to learn more about us. The URL is at the top of this slide, but if that's too long to remember, and we understand that, if you just Google peacecorpsmuseum.org, you'll find us in the web. We're currently a virtual operation, exhibiting objects and stories through our website. We're collecting all of those. But we will soon be installing two separate exhibits, one at a permanent location and the other a temporary exhibit that celebrates the first 60 years of Peace Corps. The second um, exhibit, and our first permanent display in Washington, D.C. will be installed soon at Peace Corps Place. This is the building. The building will be, Peace Corps Place will be the new offices of the National Peace Corps Association. And that location is 1.5 miles from the US Capitol, north of the Capitol, right on North Capitol Street. And it's a few blocks from the new offices of the Peace Corps Agency itself. Like Friends of Korea, the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience is a separate 501c3 and an affiliate group of the National Peace Corps Association. The second temporary exhibition, called Peace Corps at 60, Inside the Volunteer Experience, will be actually physically installed at American University Museum, the Katzen Art Center in Washington, D.C. For over a year, we have been co-curating this physical and virtual exhibit that includes nearly 50 objects from our collection, most exhibited with short stories from 30 different RPCVs, Peace Corps volunteers. So we invite you to watch for news about the opening event during the Peace Corps Week in early March. I think it will be March 3rd, but that hasn't been finally confirmed. So it'll be a virtual opening, and it'll be open to the general public, including all of the Peace Corps communities. So stay tuned for that. You can ask more about this exciting initiative during our Q&A. This slide shows you a sample of some of the objects in our museum collection. We now have close to 500 objects donated by Peace Corps volunteers and staff. The objects all must come from the volunteer or staff's years of service. So they must come from the authentic, if you will, experience of the volunteer. We now have a collection large enough that we rent collection space in Portland, Oregon, and also, as we have prepared for the upcoming exhibits, we have expanded our collection space to a Washington, D.C. area storage unit as well. On our stories page within the website, we invite you to visit it and to read the stories that are focused on objects that volunteers brought home. There are now over 40 stories published on the website, and we know that you will enjoy them. There's some of them are humorous, some of them are sad, some of them are inspiring. It's the whole gamut, and each story on this web page focuses on an object that had a particular significance to the volunteer writing the story. We help to curate and edit those stories. So we invite people to send us those stories, and we help prepare them for publication. Speaking of stories, one of the major initiatives this past year has been called the Many Faces of Peace Corps. Through this project, we're reaching out to volunteers from underrepresented groups to collect their stories. This is a partnership effort with our RPCV Oral History Archive Project, which is another interesting initiative that I'm happy to talk about more during the Q&A. So we invite you to become a member of the museum. We'll send you a monthly newsletter with links to updating articles about the latest happenings with the museum. And I want to emphasize there are no dues in becoming a member. We just want you to join us and become involved in this effort to preserve the history and to make Peace Corps and Peace Corps service more visible to the world and to the United States. There are ways you can contribute, of course, to the museum. We would love to have you gift an object or more than one from your years of service as a volunteer or Peace Corps staff. We also invite you to share a story, particularly a story that's focused on one of those objects from your years of experience and service. And of course, donating money to support our operation is greatly appreciated. We are an all volunteer operation at this point. We desperately need to hire some specific talent through staffing, but we also are eager to have more volunteers. So many of our volunteers have a particular niche of contribution that has moved our organization forward dramatically in the last 4 years since we've expanded our efforts across the country. If you are interested at all, send us an email, contact us at peacecorpsmuseum.org, and we would be happy to tell you how you might be able to help us. So don't forget your questions about the museum. Ask them in the Q&A. And now we'll turn our focus to a towering task and Alana DeJoseph. Alana, thank you.
And thank you, Pat, for doing such an important initiative. When we started this documentary, we came out of the experience of doing a documentary about the U.S. Forest Service, where there are official U.S. Forest Service historians. There are endowed chairs at universities that study the Forest Service, and there were great points of contact to get archival materials. And so we thought, this ought to be easy. We will find the official Peace Corps historian and the endowed chairs, and we'll just gather all the archival materials, which will be neatly placed in one archive. Well, none of this is true, of course, for the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps does not have an official historian. It does not have an official librarian at this point, and we are in dire need of that. And for Pat and the gang and Nicola to be developing this museum is incredibly important, because of course for the documentary we had to search high and low. We had to interview all the authors who had written about the Peace Corps, and there are not many that have written about the entire history of the Peace Corps. There are a fair amount of Peace Corps books about individual experiences, but the people that have written about the agency throughout history are very limited. The archives are scattered from the National Archives to the volunteers' basements, and from former staffers' attics to university archives. So there's material all over the place and internationally. And since host country national staff do not fall under the 5-year rule, in many ways they are our institutional memory. So there was a lot of work to be done in gathering the history of the Peace Corps. And so I'm thrilled that there will be a Peace Corps museum, because when the next documentary gets done for the 100th anniversary of the Peace Corps, they will have a place to go, and they will have people to talk to who can help them out. So in a nutshell, the Towering Task started out of one of our screenings for the Leopold documentary. The team that had produced the Forest Service documentary and the Leopold documentary were the same, and mostly the same. And so in one of our screenings, we realized that there were several returned Peace Corps volunteers among us. And so we got chatting about the possibility of a Peace Corps documentary. Somebody said, oh, there ought to be the money out there for that, and the fateful words. And that was in the spring of 2013. And we started looking into it and realized there was no feature documentary on the history of the Peace Corps. There was no baseline documentary out there. And so we realized how important it was. Now, this was in 2013. The world looked quite different then than it does now. And as we started developing the documentary, the story became more and more urgent, because it became clearer and clearer that not only did America not remember Peace Corps, but in many ways, America didn't remember why to connect with the rest of the world. And so it became crystal clear when we were in Liberia for our production, and we were getting ready to interview the U.S. ambassador to Liberia about the Peace Corps. And I had all my inside baseball questions all lined up, and why it's important for the Peace Corps to be independent of American foreign policy and such. And then I watched on TV the inauguration of Donald Trump, and I realized, oh my gosh, we're going to have to start way more basic. We're going to have to ask, why do we even have embassies in other countries? And so it changed my questions, and it changed our idea about the importance of this documentary. And we interviewed over 200 people. Just under 100 people made it into the documentary. We have materials from all kinds of archives. We got animations and graphics done. We got beautiful original music composed for the documentary. And we managed to pull it all together over the course of 6 years. And here we are now distributing the documentary. So we started with a bang at the Kennedy Center. We had screenings at the National Archive, at Rutgers University, at Yale University. We had a beautiful screening, partially organized by the Boston area RPCVs at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library, that had over 500 people on March 1st. I shudder to think at the crowds at this point. And then the pandemic came around. And so that meant everybody had to reinvent how to do their job, including us documentary filmmakers. And we had to reinvent how to distribute films. And so virtual distribution became the name of the game. And you first do the film festival circuit, and all the film festivals were going virtual. And then you do the community screenings, and we had just wonderful community screenings. And while it was sad not to be able to sit in a movie theater with a bunch of people and hear everybody's giggles and sighs and tears and be there for that visceral feeling, at the same time, suddenly we could include people that we couldn't include before. So virtually, suddenly, host country nationals could join the screenings from the countries where Peace Corps serves. And we could be much more inclusive, which has been wonderful too. And then of course, the other upside is, when you're sitting in a theater and you've just watched an hour and 45-minute documentary that captures, 60 years of history of a government agency, to then be told, and now let's do an hour panel, it feels very overwhelming to people. And here we can, people can watch the film at their leisure, and we can get together and have a Q&A when nobody is exhausted and drained from having just sat around for the last 2 hours watching the film. So there are upsides to this virtual distribution as well. That said, we are looking forward to in-person distribution again. That will hopefully come maybe towards the end of this year or whenever that it'll be possible. And our big mission for this documentary is to go beyond our echo chamber. So it's incredibly important for our Peace Corps community to know the history of the Peace Corps. So it's very important for staff and volunteers and RPCVs and former staff to see this film and understand the history of the Peace Corps. But it's even more important for us to go beyond this audience and reach the American public. And that's where we need our army of RPCVs. That's where we need all of you to think about, where else can we show this film? So what connections do we have? I always have this theory that we are one of the best connected networks out there, but we're just not leveraging the network. So there are people who know the presidents of universities, or the deans of departments, or the owners of theaters, or the presidents of museums, or libraries. And there's so many places that this documentary can reach a much wider audience that can speak to public health, education, grassroots development economics, sustainable engineering. There are so many topics that Peace Corps can be used as a lens to discuss the topic on a deeper level. So that's my last part that I'm going to state, is my call to you is think about who you know and what connections you have, of where do we go from here? So we've had a screening for Friends of Korea. Now the RPCVs of Korea, who are they connected to? Where can we show this domestically and internationally? And I would welcome all your ideas. You can reach me through our website at peacecorpsdocumentary.com. And I will repost that link, because I know that if you sign up later, then you don't see the links that were posted before. And then the other link that I will put in the chat as well is our link to our virtual theatrical release. So this is a community screening. We also have the opportunity for, you know, your friends, your family, the people that have never really got it when you told them the Peace Corps stories, to buy a movie ticket and then stream the film online at home. And this is our virtual theatrical release. It's a great way to support local movie theaters. The movie theater doesn't have to be in your state. It doesn't even have to be in the same country that you're in, since it is online. It's just a nice way to support an independent business, and then watch the film. And so you can send that link to everybody you know who you think should see the film. And there you go. That's my plug. And now I'd be more than happy to answer questions.
Okay, so we'll open it up, Q&A for anybody. You have questions?
Yeah, Lena, this is Martha King. I wonder, have you done much reach out to high schools and colleges? It seems like that would be a really wonderful audience for this.
Absolutely. So that's what we're just now getting started with. In fact, we are developing lesson plans for middle schools, high schools, and the college level. And, you know, middle school and high school will be more around social studies. And then once you get to the college level, we'll break it out into the different subject areas and the different areas of focus that you can see the Peace Corps in. It's not official yet, so we can't really talk about it in detail, but we are aiming to have a PBS broadcast. And PBS has something called PBS Learning Media, which is a website that schools around the country can access for free. And they host lesson plans up there. So PBS Learning Media tends to focus on middle schools and high schools. So we'll have our middle school and high school lesson plans up there for sure. The university and college level lesson plans will likely be hosted on our website on peacecorpsdocumentary.com. We may partner with some universities and have them hosted on their websites as well. And that again will be the RPCV phone tree network of who knows which universities where that would like to host that on their sites as well. But I think it's really important, and especially starting with middle schools even, you know, we think of high schools, we think of colleges really, because you graduate from college and then you join the Peace Corps, but you're right, it has to start earlier. It has to start at high school. It has to start at middle school. It's part of our civics education in my mind.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Another audience is, I sometimes participate in programs done by Active Minds. Have people heard about Active Minds, MINDS? And I don't know if it's just Denver based, but it's a program that does outreach mostly to retired seniors. They started, I think, in congregate living facilities and maybe even nursing homes. And now they have programs that are virtual, but they bring people together in bookstores, in community settings, and now it's virtual. But a lot of retired people are thirsty for knowledge about the world. And I think that would be another audience that would be, I think, supportive of the Peace Corps politically and perhaps economically as a group.
That sounds great. Do you have a contact at Active Minds?
Yeah, let me send you one. I do need your email address, and I don't know if it's local, but at least it would give you kind of the model for how they do that.
And I am actually in Denver, so not that
Oh,
it
you're in
matters during the
Denver.
pandemic.
Oh, great. I could forward you one of the emails if I get your address.
My address is in the chat. I just put it in there.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
I will add to that, there's another group of retired learning group called the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute. And its abbreviation is OLLI. And it's a national group that has a local programs, often centered at a university. And they have have a lot of variety of structure for the offerings that they organize. So that would be another, I think, a really fruitful place that just now has occurred to me because of Martha's suggestion about Active Minds.
That's a great idea. And actually, I think in Asheville, North Carolina, the RPCV group there worked with Ollie, and they couldn't do the whole film because their programming was shorter segments, but they used a couple of pieces from it.
Uh-huh. And then there could be another panel, that would be another thing that could happen.
Absolutely. I think that's great. Let's pursue that.
Yep. Yeah.
Alana, what, if you want to suggest to your university to purchase a copy or purchase access to it, what happens there? How do you do that?
So a university can get, so we have a couple different things. There's, if they want to have a screening event, which is kind of what we want right now, we want that energy going of them bringing together their different departments and having a larger event that involves the entire campus community. They can go to peacecorpsdocumentary.com and go to host a screening and then purchase the film. And then there's the university license that they can get. That to me is thrilling, because the opportunity there is universities find themselves as much in silos as the Peace Corps does. And so you have the economics department that doesn't talk to the health department, that doesn't talk to the engineering department. And here we provide them with a tool to break out of those silos and put together a panel of their luminaries from these departments, and then discuss what does public health mean on a global grassroots from a global grassroots perspective? What does development economics mean? What is appropriate technology in the context of engineering, and so on? And so connecting to the dean, connecting to the president, getting somebody at the university who then takes it and runs with it. That's kind of the important part, because as RPCVs, we are used to doing it all ourselves. And so we find ourselves, taking the banner and I'll organize it and I'll do this. And before we know it, we're in the same room with the same people, talking about the same stories that we've talked about since we were Peace Corps volunteers. And what we really want is, we are providing an opportunity to these organizations to show the film. They should host the film. They should email their mailing list, and it should be their event. And we're gladly there to help spread the word amongst the Peace Corps community, but it shouldn't be Peace Corps events.
Can I make another suggestion?
Yes, go ahead.
Another organization that has a lot of similar ideals is Rotary International. And Rotary International has 1.2 million members in almost 200 countries around the world. And I'm a retired or an ex Rotary District Governor, but there is an organization that came out of Denver, and it's called Partnering for Peace. And you may be aware of it. And it's headed by a gentleman by the name of Steve Werner.
Oh, yeah.
And Steve is a very strong Rotarian, and Steve's been very active in as an RPCV. Mark Zilber, that you might know, who's now living in Israel, who's also a very strong Rotarian that's been active in the National Peace Corps Administration, is on the board of that organization. And you might contact Steve there in Denver, which is the hub of this. It's called Partnering for Peace. And he has a pretty good distribution channel for this.
That's great. That's a wonderful idea. Steve Werner knows everybody. He is connected to everybody.
And his sister-in-law lives just a few miles from me down here in South Florida. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
I
actually
down here from time to time. Yeah.
Just exchanged emails with him saying we need to talk because of that very reason.
Tell him that I said that you need to talk about this.
Leo sent me. Yes, Leo, what's your last name?
Phillips, Phillips.
Got it. Okay, I will also tell him. Leo Phillips sent me.
Yeah,
that's perfect. Thank you.
Before another question comes up, I want to make sure that all of you know that our museum co-chair, Nicola Dino, is with us here. That's the person there with her first name. And Nicola, you may have something you want to add.
I will when it's time.
Okay.
Yeah. Do we have, do we have any questions too about the museum as well?
Yes, actually, a question I had. Am I muted? No.
No, you're on.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Pat.
Yeah.
The pictures of the objects that you showed were all sort of cultural objects. Are you also collecting documents or reports or photographs, other things that are not so much the cultural aspect of our experiences?
We are making sure that those get collected. The museum works very closely with the Peace Corps Community Archive, which is the largest known repository of documents, photos, correspondence, reports, personal papers of returned Peace Corps volunteers and staff. And that Peace Corps Community Archive is held at American University. It was started more than 20 years ago and has been building ever since then. It has several hundred deposits from RPCVs and is open for more. So that's the place where you put the documents. The museum is really doing its best to focus on the objects because objects are not accepted in any other collection that we're aware of. There are a few objects in the John F. Kennedy Library and Museum in Boston, but they only accept objects or even documents now from volunteers who entered service during the Kennedy administration. So those are the volunteers who served from 61 to 63, or at least began their service during that time. So all the rest of people, all the rest of the volunteers have no other necessarily. They may in their home institutions, their local historical societies, local universities, but this one, Peace Corps Community Archive, is open to anyone who served any place and any time. So that's where and like I say, the museum is working. In fact, as part of our exhibit, 60th anniversary exhibit, we have several documents from that archive on display and part of our exhibit.
We have a very active collection team, and every month we go over everything that people have offered to send us, and we do we do accept some things like just recently we accepted a gentleman gave us a bunch of his things that he collected during his experience in Iran. And in that collection, he had some papers, but they were like newspapers. He was there when the Shah was crowned, and he has papers during that time in both Arabic and English. And we accepted those because that was part of what he collected there. So it's on an individual basis of things that we might collect. We're also going to get a book that is associated with someone's medical kit. We have his kit and he wanted his book to go with his kit. So, we do look at that specifically.
And Pat and Nicola, just you mentioned too about you have out in Portland, Oregon too as well. What can you go into more detail about that?
What we have in Portland are the objects that were donated through the various temporary exhibits that we had. The first exhibit was like in 99. We had 5 exhibits here in Portland. The last exhibit that we had was in 2015. And then after that, we went to DC and expanded. So we have a fair amount of things. Right now, like Pat said, we have an additional storage unit in DC, and that was opened for the people who were sending this stuff to DC. And again, right now, it depends on where you live. Mm-hmm. If you live, and we haven't decided west of the Mississippi or whatever, but I get stuff here, and stuff goes there. I mean, it's up to the person to pay for them to send their items. So we prefer that they send them here if it's closer because it's less expensive. But
Sure.
yeah, so it's
Mhm.
it's how we are set up for right now. And like I
Yeah.
said, all the stuff we have is from all the temporary exhibits that people said they want to donate their items.
Mhm.
I just add that the exhibit has items from both collections.
Yeah.
What has been in Portland, the most of it is what we call our legacy collection, the objects that were donated over the first 15 or so years.
Mhm.
We're adding to that, of course, but we're also creating the second
Yeah,
repository.
I mean, that's how we've decided to make sure we know where stuff came from. The legacy collection, the new collection, which is what I call what I get now, and then the
Mhm.
East Coast collection. And maybe sometime we might have a Midwest collection. You never know.
Yeah. I'd be interested in the Midwest.
I know.
Be careful, Jerry. You
Yeah.
got volunteered.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's okay.
So
How
I
about
do,
Jean?
I have,
Jean O'Byrne is here. We didn't welcome her.
Hi.
And if you have any questions, Jean, let us know as well. You were a K-26, I see, right?
Yeah, right.
Great.
I have a question for Alana, which is sort of more to the challenge of what you did in putting that documentary together. Looking across 60 years of Peace Corps history and your decisions about what to put in, what to not put in, themes, how obviously, you could probably talk about this for hours, but I'd just be interested in sort of your thought process for how you envisioned what made it into the documentary.
Well, when we first started the documentary, we started it from a very inside baseball perspective. So I would ask people about the independence of the agency. I would ask about the struggles of white saviorism. I would ask about all these philosophical topics that are so important about the Peace Corps, but that we love to discuss and philosophize about. And very soon we had a 5-hour documentary with just a bunch of talking heads philosophizing about the various aspects of the Peace Corps. And there was no story. And it would have been a film that nobody, not even our PCVs, would have wanted to watch. So we quickly realized that we needed to tell a story, and it needed to be along the arc of the Peace Corps history. So the volunteers we interviewed had to come from those different eras, and they had to represent the different parts of the world. And we had to see both what was happening in the field and what was happening in Washington, D.C. So very quickly, that filter narrowed down what it was that we could do. There were fascinating stories that we wanted to talk about. We wanted to talk about Peace Corps graduating out of South Korea. But in the time slot that we had, we were focusing on other issues. And so we couldn't really do it at that point, and it just didn't fit in. And because we didn't talk about the whole impact of Peace Corps and the third goal and bringing it home until much later in the Peace Corps' history. So it was very challenging because there were some really interesting aspects that we then couldn't include because of that. At the same time, it made for a much more interesting story for somebody who didn't know anything about the Peace Corps and who didn't want to go down that path of discussing for 2 hours why the Peace Corps needs to be independent from American foreign policy. Right. And we wanted to show them more than tell them, and that eventually evolved the documentary. Of course, all the while making the documentary, in my mind, I was thinking, and now if only we can figure out a financial model so that we can do half-hour documentaries on each of the Peace Corps countries, because each Peace Corps country really has its own story. And its historical arc, because its own story changed a lot over the eras, and when Peace Corps was evacuated, when Peace Corps was there, when there were civil wars, when presidents changed, when volunteers mainly did this and now they mainly do that. And so I would love to do a Peace Corps Korea documentary and kick off with that. I would love to do a Peace Corps Colombia documentary and continue that process. But we have to figure out the financial model of how to do that. How do we fund each documentary that's going to be $200,000-$300,000 each? So it's going to be a little challenging, but I think those stories have to eventually be told, and maybe we could tell them in kind of a Anthony Bourdain parts unknown feel, where the information trickles in through the active footage that we see in the country while we're there. All of that is in development, but if you have connections, ideas, or finances, do let us know.
Sure.
Thank you.
This is Martha King. Hi, other Martha Cooper. Two things. One, Elena, just what a fabulous job you did. I'm embarrassed I didn't watch the movie recently because I got sucked into the TV with all this insurgency going on in DC, but I did watch it it must have been March or April, and paid for it. But I love your suggestion about something like Anthony Bourdain. Why not get a outreach to some channel, CNN or PBS or somebody, to say, hey, could you support a series like this? It would be fabulous. I think it would be just wonderful. Now to switch to a question I have about the museum, maybe Nancy and Jerry, you know most about this, is there was that concerted effort a few years ago to display objects from volunteers at an exhibit in Korea. And that was relatively temporary, wasn't it? Do you know what has happened to those objects? And is that something that might inform the museum in DC?
Well, Nancy, go ahead and chime in here. My understanding is those objects are all still there. Right now, they're in storage. We haven't received any information about doing another exhibit, and it was a grand exhibit, what they had. It was incredible. But we haven't had any other discussions with that, but my understanding too is those objects now are belong to the museum in Seoul as well. And so that's something that Friends of Korea can revisit, of course, with the museum there. But I know there's a lot more artifacts out there that people did not contribute to. Nancy, any comment yourself?
No, you're exactly right. Everyone who donated those items, that was a gift to the museum, an irrevocable gift. I think they might have even had that word in the agreement that everyone had to sign. I think that was a reason why some people, in fact, many people, did not make a contribution, because they were worried that it would go to the museum, be shown in this 1 month long show, and then end up in the basement forever. Now, when we asked them about that at the time, when we were having the discussions back and forth, their indication was that they could see things being pulled out for special exhibits. If it's focusing on a particular time frame, there might be, and Martha, I think you were at the museum, so you may remember that they had, like, oh, you didn't go to the museum? I'm sorry.
No, unfortunately, I did not. Yeah, I contributed some things.
Right. Yes, that I remember. Well, they have, for example, a room that's sort of Korea through the ages. So they have a whole section on the nurses who went to Germany and the coal miners who went to Germany and their objects, and it's very much by time frame. So as one gentleman said to me, we might do a thing about Korea in the 70s, and there could be several of these objects brought back out and talking about the Peace Corps, because that was an important part of Korea in the 70s. So that is how I see them, these items possibly being reused. But to a point that you made, one of the things that I have that I would like to contribute to the Museum of the Peace Corps Experience, it is, however, a document, but I think it's a document that might be worthwhile. It is the catalog from that exhibit, which was truly an amazing catalog. That the Koreans do these things really well. I mean, it's magnificent. And we have, it was a 2-volume catalog. Jerry wrote an essay that was in it. And it is a picture of all the objects that were donated by several hundred volunteers. So that was one of the things that I have sort of with your name on it to share with you all. I don't know if it fits with what you're looking at, but.
Right. I think that that would be something that we would be interested in keeping there. We are starting we've already got a number of books already in our collection, and we have a new initiative to begin to compile our goal is a comprehensive bibliography of titles that are written by Peace Corps authors. Particularly, we're starting focus first on memoirs and books about their experience. But eventually, we see ourselves just, any Peace Corps writer who wrote a textbook or a work of fiction. We could see adding them, because again, the museum really wants to track the impact of Peace Corps.
Mhm.
And until we know what our Peace Corps authors are contributing, we really have no idea what impact they're having on the country or the world through
Right.
the experience.
Right.
Just over my shoulder in the back there, that's one of the banners. You see it in blue with beautiful journey, endless friendships there. That was hanging outside the museum in different parts of Seoul there too as well.
Oh, we'd love that if you're, that'd be a fabulous.
You're going to have to pry that out of Jerry's hands.
Well, he could make it as a bequest.
He
There
could.
you go, Jerry.
Yeah, so that when he dies, his family knows that it should go to the museum. And when Friends of Korea, if they last this long,
We will.
need to want to exhibit it, the museum would lend it back.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sure.
there you go. There you go.
Okay.
So those are the arrangements we can make.
All right. But
And
my
actually-
birthday is coming up, so I don't want to talk about my passing yet.
Well, it's all of us have to be realistic, and the
Limited shelf life is what you're telling me.
Yeah.
more decisions we make before the time, the easier it is on the family.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
I'm just having this idea that I don't know if other countries have had exhibits about the Peace Corps experience in their country. But what would be kind of interesting is, could there be some sort of a virtual connection between the Korean Museum of Contemporary History, or whatever they were called, and you all? I mean, that because they have a lot of the kinds of things that you're interested in, and it would be, I wonder if there would be any interest on the part of the museum.
May I?
Go ahead.
We are definitely working on that as we speak, of having a lot of links to certain places that would be interesting for people who go to our website. So yes, if we're putting in links as we go now. We're working on it, and definitely that is something that we've talked about for a long time, is how do we link up our website to many other places that would be kind of a natural fit.
Right.
Because we do know of places that have there's a woman who's done a lot of stuff on the Mariana Islands, and we want to get her link. I mean, so perfect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right. And we want to answer Alana's plea to organize the sources of primary data that can be used for research and education about the Peace Corps service and programs and values. It's really about promoting the visibility of Peace Corps values. And so we don't ever want to have another documentarian come and say, how do I find out about how much information and where information is about Peace Corps? We want to try to build ideally, I mean, this is aspirational and audacious, but we'd love to have a comprehensive list of those repositories.
I have one other question, or it sounds out of the box, Elena, but who are the really rich former Peace Corps benefactors? I mean, did Patrick Kennedy Jr. or somebody, Kennedy, Lillian Carter, the Carter Foundation people, and wouldn't it be nice for someone like that to leave a legacy of supporting a project that you have in mind to do the 30-minute pieces? And of course, you start with Lillian Carter. And where did she go? India? Where was she?
Yeah.
And where did and Joseph Kennedy, and so Lillian Carter got her letters published, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful book. Everybody should read it.
Yeah. Who else is rich that you could?
The obvious one is Reed Hastings of Netflix.
Right, right.
Oh, I
I'm
didn't
sure,
know.
Alana, you've had discussions with him, I hope.
We interviewed him. He's in the documentary.
That's right, he was, yeah.
And we've talked with him. It's
It could be a Netflix original series. What the heck?
Alana's done her best towards that goal.
Right up there with, the Queen's Gambit. I mean,
By the way, Queen's Gambit was written by a former English professor at Ohio University.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. That's great.
Alana, one of the things that impressed me about what Towering Task did was it's a reflection of US history in the past 60 years.
Mhm.
And so many people are so unaware of US intervention in other countries in bizarre and negative ways also. So I think it's so important just to distribute it to historians and anybody who really wants to know, well, what is this nation all about? Well, it's a mixture of good and bad and bombing and whatever. But you, I feel, did a very fine job of demonstrating that it wasn't a peaceful, Peace Corps' existence wasn't in times of peace much at all, and we're willing to articulate the challenges and even the turn up your nose at volunteers going to a former Soviet Union. I mean, those kinds of things I think help make it more real. And so I really appreciate that. But just an amazing review of US history.
Yeah, I agree. I really learned a lot from it. For example, I think I had heard about the Dominican Republic, but and what had happened at the time, but I had forgotten all about it if I had heard of it. And so that was just so interesting to me. And then Laurette Miller Rupee too, and then we received the award, and I knew about her, I read about her, but then actually watching the videos and seeing how she was able to really promote Peace Corps and see that visually, not just reading about it. That was impressive.
I think I certainly knew very, very little about Peace Corps history. I know when we joined, we got maybe a flyer, 2-3 pages or so with bullet points of Peace Corps history, which I promptly forgot and filed away, and knew just really only my little snippet of Peace Corps, my little window on Peace Corps. And I think that's true for a lot of us. We each have our experience window on the Peace Corps. And it wasn't until producing this documentary that I dug into the I had that same experience. Wow. Oh, I had no idea. Oh, this is cool. Yeah. And as we were looking to tell the story along the timeline, we kept looking for Peace Corps anchors. How did Peace Corps relate to the Iran hostage crisis, and it turned out there was always a Peace Corps volunteer involved somehow. No matter what big world event was happening, there was always an RPCV or a Peace Corps volunteer with their foot in the door. And it became a joke because we knew that, okay, we have another turning point in history that we have to talk about with Peace Corps. And yeah, we know there's a Peace Corps volunteer somewhere. We just have to figure out where they were and who they were.
Right. Okay, I know we're already past time. Do we have any other questions? I think we could probably keep going, but I want to respect everybody's time out there too.
This has been wonderful.
Yeah. And
Yes, thank you very
yeah,
much.
thank you. And the good thing, it's recorded, and so we'll be able to put it on our website too as well for people that couldn't come, because I know there was a lot of interest in it.
Well, thank you for doing that too.
Right. That's great.
Thank you, Nancy and Jerry, for hosting this.
Sure, sure. Well, thank you,
Absolutely.
everyone, and Pat, Nicola, Alana. I mean, this has been wonderful, and it's part of what I always thought when I said I got there on my birthday. It's the gift that keeps giving, and this is just one more example of it. And I just really appreciate everything you're doing. You know, not only for Peace Corps, but for America in this case. Very important. So thank you.
Well, be
Thank
sure
you,
to
everyone.
Thank you very much.
get your
Thank
name
you.
on our membership list, please.
Oh,
And
for sure.
send me ideas for places to show a towering task.
Sure,
Stay in
sure.
touch, everyone.
Okay, take care. Thank you,
Take
everyone.
care.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Happy New
Thank
Year
you.
too.
Happy New Year.
Stay
Bye-bye.
safe.
Bye-bye.
Good night.